so many that lost their businesses during that time. Hello and welcome to our show. Here it is, already the 12th of April, and oh my goodness, I'm with Spotlight Publishing. This year seems to be going really fast, but I'm with Spotlight Publishing, and today we're bringing you an upcoming author and another author, but also experts in their field, and we're so delighted. And what Spotlight Publishing is all about is to showcase our authors, and then also to showcase the experts that we serve, that serve authors, and to provide the tools and resources so that your book is able to keep on selling and keep out to the world. So our first guest is going to be none other than Jackie Simmons, and she has pretty incredible work that she is doing, and I'm going to invite her to our conversation right now. Jackie, welcome to have you.
Hey, wow, everything happens so fast in virtual land.
I know it is. It's like, oh, I got a little bit of time. I wanted to introduce you, Jackie, by reading your bio because it's so concise and it's so to the point and so succinctly tells what you're all about. And the beautiful part is you have worked with me on authoring a book and a couple of things. We've been in joint collaboration books, so we've done a lot of things together. You're clear off in Florida and I'm in Arizona, and yet we've been able to connect through a lot of various ways, and I'm so pleased with that. So she's a TEDx speaker. Jackie Simmons is a TEDx speaker. She's a radio show host, an international best-selling author, a resilience master, and co-founder of the Teen Suicide Prevention Society. She's best known for her mission to wake up the world. That is so cool. In 1995, blindsided by her 14-year-old daughter's suicide attempt, Jackie entered the world of depression, addictions, medical mysteries, and deadly silences. The journey in the world of mental health services and cultural taboos left Jackie feeling lost and alone. Okay on the outside with I'm really fine, which we all know about, in her most frequent response to inquiries about how she was doing. Jackie hid her deep psychic wounds from the world behind a facade of frantic entrepreneurial activity, and I know that well. Then on August 3rd, 2019, Jackie's now 37-year-old daughter broke the silence. Jackie wasn't ready. She calls October 3rd, 2019, the day her purpose tapped her on her shoulder. Please join me as I interview Jackie and we go on the journey that launched her mission to make suicide, especially teen suicide, a thing of the past. Welcome, Jackie.
Thank you, Becky.
What you do in the world, Jackie, is so phenomenal. And having lost a number of family members to suicide, one was a teen. I so relate and so understand. And I think that sometimes when we have gone through those kind of things, we even have a little bit of consideration of maybe that's what I should do too, because of the depression, the heartache that goes with that. And it's one thing when an adult does it. When a kid does it, when a teenager or a young person does it, it magnifies what we're really facing. Let's have that conversation.
Yeah, that's why we chose to focus on teens. And our first attempt to shift the conversation was actually directed towards teens. We created the book, the Make It a Great Day, The Choice is Yours, and that your company helped us get done in record time. And the book is inspirational stories to help teens break the silence and start having talks. What we didn't know is that we were starting with the wrong audience. And it took a year before we realized that what's going to turn teen suicide around is going to be the adults having the talk about suicide.
Absolutely.
And having the talk about suicide is not something I was really skilled at. As a matter of fact, I had spent over 20 years avoiding it. I had lived through my daughter's suicide attempts, but we didn't really talk about it. As long as Stephanie was getting professional help, I had sold myself on the idea that we didn't need to talk about it. After all, why bring that up again? I was honestly scared that I would put the idea back into her head. Now I know what a myth that is, but I didn't know then.
And, that's the thing, is that oftentimes people don't know what to say. Mm-hmm. They don't know how to handle it. They're dealing with their own depression, especially the families, the parents, the family, those that have been are related to the individual that did this.
Okay,
and
we're going to talk about two things here, because you're talking about post-suicide and the permission.
And you're talking about prevention, yes.
And so there are two things going on, because you nailed it. When one person in a family or in a community takes their own life, they give tacit approval for everyone around them who knows them to do the same thing. When we take and look at our social media and just media-driven world, we are now all in that higher risk group. Why? Because we all know a celebrity chef, a talented singer, a gifted comedian. Thanks to media, celebrity suicide has now made suicide an acceptable thing on a very large stage. And I did a major rant about celebrity suicide. I think a celebrity does not have the right to take their own life because of this, because it gives tacit approval. So having the talk, if someone in your family, in your community has taken their own life, you need the script. The script about suicide is a simple, short, science-based script. It's designed to work with the brain the way the brain is designed. It's actually constructed to prevent what I call the guilt nightmare that the people end up with when someone they know tries to take or actually does take their own life. The wonderful thing about the script is that it's absolutely designed to tell you when intervention is necessary, when it's needed, when it's time to intervene. And it's designed to build emotional resilience in both the teen or your loved one and in you when you follow the script.
So let's talk about this script. What does this script say?
4 questions. It starts with inviting your loved one to talk one-on-one. That's important. No tag teaming with parents, no one talk with all your kids. It's a one-on-one conversation. And you ask the first question, and you ask these verbatim. They are specifically designed in neutral language. The first question, have you heard about the rise in teen suicides? If you're talking to a senior, if you heard about the rise in senior suicides, make it demographically specific. The second question, do you have a friend who's tried or died? For those who like to understand the basis behind this, these are closed-ended questions intentionally, and we're pulling it in, pulling the topic in closer to them.
Beautiful.
So you make the appointment to have the conversation. You don't blindside somebody. I have something important I want to talk to you. Is today good, or would after dinner be better? You make the appointment. You have the conversation. You ask the first question, have you heard about the rise in teen suicides? You just listen, take a deep breath, ask the second question, do you know someone who's tried or died? Just listen. No judgment, no fixing. If they get emotional, let them get emotional. Don't touch them. Let them have their emotion. If they have any. They may not, because teens are good at hiding emotion. The third question, and take a deep breath here, parents, because you're going to need to stay calm. Have you ever thought of leaving that way? You brought it all the way home. closed-ended questions all the way home. Have you ever thought of leaving this way? It's a neutral question, and you just listen. And now you're going to do something they're not going to expect, and it's going to change everything for both you and your child. The fourth question: why stay? What are your reasons for staying? And this is where you go deeper. This is where you ask, tell me more. What you've done with this drawing in, and flipping to the open question, to the positive, is you've now interrupted a thought pattern in their brain, and it will never play the same way again.
It wouldn't, because they've been asked some very, very pointed questions, but well thought out, because they've had to express themselves, but it also got those wheels turning, the heart, and actually the heart involved.
And now it's why stay. Basically, what you're asking is, what's so good about your life that you want more of it? The reality is that if you start out asking that question of a teen, you're going to get nothing. And I do mean that. They will literally say, there's nothing good about my life today. Don't you understand? Life is terrible. If you start out asking for the positive, you will get the negative, because we have a natural negative bias, not just because of our caveman brain wiring history, but because culturally we are focused on the negative. We are flooded with negative images, negative language all the time. So instead of fighting that, we designed the script to work with that. So you're bringing them in the direction their brain will naturally go, and then flipping them. Now, here's where you get into, this is what's so valuable for parents. If they have thoughts of leaving, question 3, yes, I have thoughts of leaving that way, and they don't have any reasons for staying, stay with them and dial 911. Dial your local emergency room. This is not a time to go messing around. Oh, they'll hate you for it, and you just might save their life.
Mm-hmm.
Any
other
other
help
combination
that they really need. Yes.
Yeah. Any other combination. If they have thoughts of leaving and they have reasons for staying, you may decide you want to call the suicide prevention hotline, and that number is 800-273-8255. And actually now it's 988 in the United States. So you can call the National Suicide Prevention Hotline with 3 digits, 988. And the reason you might want to do that and get your kid or your loved one on the phone with a stranger, because it's often easier to talk with a stranger than it is to talk with someone who might know the possible players in our pain.
Right. Yeah.
So you get to choose. But if they have thoughts of leaving and no reasons for staying, it's an emergency call to 911. This is the land of intervention. Don't wait. Any other combination, you get to choose, and there are other tools. This is what we founded the Teen Suicide Prevention Society for, to get you choices in how you respond, choices in how you have the conversation. Most importantly, helping your teen or your loved one understand they have choices. People take their own lives when they have hit a place where they think that there are no other choices. They've decided that suicide is the best idea.
And they also think that that's the best for everybody. For everybody. Yeah.
Yeah. They think it's the best for everybody. They think they've decided that they become a burden. And the only way out of that is to help them see why stay. And the only way to get them to see why stay is for them to figure it out for themselves by asking why stay. What are your reasons for staying? And then parents, zip it and wait for it.
Yeah.
Zip it and wait for it. As soon as their brain starts to activate on that question, you're actually helping them create new neural pathways in their brain. You got to give it time to work. Let that silence be as long as it needs to be. And that's how you will save more than one life. I highly recommend that everybody take themselves through the 4 steps. Write them down, write down the questions, answer them for yourselves. I mean, if you're watching this, the answer to the first question is yes, I've heard about the rise in teen suicides. Oh, but let me tell you the truth about it. Suicide ideation among young adults in America has doubled in the last 2 years. That's according to the Center for Disease Control.
There's even songs that are about it. That it's horrible.
It's what we have is this split culture. We have the teen culture that made it okay to take their own lives, even and doing things as stupid as eating Tide Pods a couple of years ago. Then they started creating TV shows that I won't even mention the name of because I think it was the most horrendous idea ever. Remember, once someone has permission, you've taken away the naturally occurring injunction. We used to have injunctions, and not naturally, but nurturingly. We used to have injunctions. Suicide used to be considered a crime against the village. There were religious injunctions against it. There were societal injunctions against it. All of those are gone. And 2 years ago, the statistic was over 3,000 teens attempt to take their own lives every day, just in the US. That's the statistic that tapped me on my shoulder and whacked me upside the head with a 2x4 on August the 3rd, 2019, when my daughter broke the silence on her multiple suicide attempts.
I think we were at an event right after that, I believe, and you were just like a mess because you just, the reality of it all and it coming back front and center and hitting you right in the face.
When Stephanie started her 7-minute talk, which is where this all occurred, she was delivering a message that matters. And she started with that statistic. I'm in the back of the room. It's my event. I'm in the back of the room. She's the first speaker up out of the dozen speakers that day. And I'm like stunned twice. First, because I had no idea the number was that high, over 3,000 a day. And second, because I had no idea suicide was her topic. And Becky, I'm so proud of my daughter. She looked amazing in a dark blouse and a flowery skirt, and her hair was pulled back in combs. And she continued her talk with, when I was 14, after a bad day of shopping, I stood in my bathroom. The pain of not fitting into any clothes was just more proof that I didn't fit in anywhere. And that pain was more than I could bear. So I took a razor and cut into my left arm, trying to ease the pain and my life. In the back of the room, all the blood drained out of my face. I could feel.
I don't know how you got through the rest of the day.
30 years of stress management training is the only thing that kept me from crawling into a corner and just bawling. Stephanie continued. That wasn't my only attempt. There were others. And outside of professional help, I've never really talked about it, especially not with Mom. Mom and I talked around it, but not about it. It was too painful, too awkward, too easy to avoid. Mom and I had other talks. We had to talk about sex, and Mom and I had to talk about drugs, and Mom and I had to talk about alcohol. Then I went to college on a dry campus. That means the kegs were hidden in the showers of the girls' dorm. Mom and I had to talk about alcohol more than once, but we didn't talk about suicide. I still struggle with suicidal thoughts. And in the back of the room, I went from pale to bone cold as I realized the struggles that she had had to face alone because I didn't have the courage to have the talk about suicide. Stephanie wound up her talk with saying, along my suicide avoidant journey, I've learned tons of coping skills, and now I want to teach teens these skills before they need them.
Perfect.
There wasn't a dry eye in the house. She got a standing ovation. People were rushing up and hugging her and thanking her for being so brave and so vulnerable. And I was frozen.
You were just like, I can't move. I can't think. I can't do anything.
I was totally torn between pride for her bravery and guilt and shame for my cowardice. And that's when it hit me. 3,000 teens a day. That means every day 6,000 parents start to live the guilt nightmare that I've lived. That means every day over 20,000 grandparents, aunts, uncles, brothers, and sisters start to live the guilt nightmare. And Becky, that means hundreds of thousands of classmates, teachers, boyfriends, girlfriends, and neighbors.
Oh, yes,
Right.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And that's how we ended up. Well, after that event, Stephanie and I started to work together. Who knew that was possible? That's how we founded the Teen Suicide Prevention Society, because it dawned on me that maybe Stephanie was right. And maybe the way to stop teen suicide was to have the talk about suicide before you think they need it, before they start to struggle.
I know my nephew, when he took his life, it was 2 years to the day from when my dad took his life. And I think it was my dad giving it permission. It was him saying, well, Papa could do it. Why not me? And oh man, our family was so torn up for so long. We just, even today, the tears will roll because this boy was a beautiful human being. And he's gone. He's long gone. He didn't have the children. He didn't have the things, I think we almost lost my brother, his dad. We almost lost his mom. The other siblings were messed up for a very long time. And my daughters, they already had to deal with losing their grandfather. Then they had lost their cousin. And I'm telling you, and in between we had a dear friend who was in our house that day and that night went home and took her life. And we had no suspicion of it.
You can't tell by looking. And that's actually our new campaign, is you can't tell by looking. We've launched the suicide risk factor assessment so that people can actually start to explore what are the risk factors in their family, and they can judge it. And so that just launched. We're super proud about that.
Well, I want to take just a brief break. I don't think I'll even take the video break that I typically do. I would like to invite Lynn. Lynn does amazing work with the Extraordinary Being movement. And I want to open up this conversation. I think it's going to kind of shift it a little bit differently, but I think it's really time. This conversation is really important. Lynn, thank you for being here. I know you've been listening in the background, and I do want to do an introduction for Lynn, but I want to kind of open up this conversation because I know that there's not one of us in this world that doesn't face or haven't been around something like this. And we want to know the answers. And let's open up the conversation. So Lynn DeCarmine is a personal development coach. He's a speaker, a trainer, a co-host of the Extraordinary Being Movement podcast. His knowledge expands into life and business coaching, hypnosis, NLP, mindfulness, and cognitive behavioral therapy. The Extraordinary Being Movement is a full-service personal development company specializing in life and business coaching, online training, workshops, as well as virtual and live events. The Extraordinary Being Movement is a global movement to empower people for personal growth and achievement. Lynn, welcome to this conversation. And I know it's kind of taking a little different shift, but I think that this is a really important subject and something that needs to be brought to the fore and brought to the life because I know of so many parents that have lost loved ones, and the repercussions, the around the world, to the core repercussions of suicide is just too phenomenal. So I welcome you to, Lynn, if you met him and his team and have been interviewed by Lynn, you feel on top of the world when they have interviewed you, because three young men, they converse with you, they make you feel like you're just this extraordinary being, and I will never forget that interview because I felt so honored and so respected and so supported, and I really admire the work that you bring to the world. So along with Jackie, I would love to open up this conversation, and I also feel that you and Jackie could have some really close
Sure.
connection to be able to bring this, because it's something that we face in every society,
Hmm.
and we face it everywhere. So let's open up that conversation and have a conversation about also how to get this message out even further than what we've been able. That Jackie has done a phenomenal job, but let's take it even further.
No, Becky, thank you so much for the wonderful introduction. I greatly appreciate it. And with Jackie, I've had multiple friends that have committed suicide. I myself have been suicidal in the past, and I can relate to a lot of things you were saying, where, especially as a teenager, and that's when my biggest time frame was, where you don't feel resourceful. You don't feel that there's any possibilities. You feel like the world is ending because you're only limited on the knowledge that you know, and you don't have if you don't know what the right questions to ask, you don't know where to go to find the right answers.
Mm-hmm.
And I know for myself, it was very hard. And it was even up into my adulthood. I still felt the same way, especially when I became overwhelmed with too much on my plate. My whole body just kind of went into this flight or fight mode, survival mode. And at times I just didn't know what to do. And I would just have these ongoing thoughts that just kind of overwhelmed me. I mean, I got to a point in my life that as soon as I woke up, the little brain chatter, the voice, the monkey voice in my head, the chatter, repeated at least 10 times to kill myself as soon as I woke up.
Oh yeah, the negative echo chamber.
Yes,
Yes.
And it was very powerful. And I knew I didn't want that, but I knew, well, what do I have to lose by not doing it? But then I realized that I started to think about the things that, to me, I started thinking about, how is this going to impact other people? And I started as a young parent. I started having children at 19, and they were pretty much my saving grace in the sense of me not wanting to pursue it as far as I wanted to go with it, because I kept thinking, well, how is this really going to impact them? What type of legacy am I going to leave behind? How is this really going to affect them? I started thinking about this more and more, and how this is really going to affect the other people in my life. And that kind of helped me push myself through that hardship at the time to get me over that. And then also, I've always been very big into personal development, and I dedicated myself to it. And that's kind of why, and how what I'm doing now came about, the Extraordinary Being movement, because I want to take a stand for other people like you are, in the realm of the unlimited possibilities that you can really have for your life, and that each of us are extraordinary. We don't have to feel that we're ordinary in life, but because we are unique individuals, because that's how we were born and brought into the world. And sometimes we don't see that uniqueness. We don't see that because we're blocked by that negative, just those negative thoughts, that negative barrier that's holding us back. And change is hard. Change is scary because we're already conditioned our body and our minds to have these negative thoughts, and we're already impacted by it. We're comfortable with. The sad part is that we're actually comfortable there, being in pain, when we don't want to be there.
It's the go-to, isn't it?
Yeah, but we've conditioned our bodies, because what I've read and understand is that our bodies feel the emotion first and then our brains. So we've conditioned ourselves body to feel this way, and and we're addicted to that feeling of pain and punishment because it's all we've ever known. And then trying to move us out of that field of change, going out of that comfort zone, is scary. And then we're like, our body's in shock. No, stay back. And the brain's like, you're not good enough. Well, you can't move forward, but yet we can.
At that belief, putting the crack in that foundation. That's what we're all about doing, because we are all dealing with these cycles of negative thoughts. They're normal. Even Freud said suicidal thoughts are normal.
Sure.
The reality is getting stuck in them, making a plan around them, or worse, you have a negative thought, You try not to think about it because you're scared. You don't know who to talk to. You don't want people to worry about you. You don't want to end up being in a 72-hour hold, or you don't want the embarrassment. You don't want to be thought that you're broken. So you don't tell anybody about it. So you try not to think about it. And what you're actually doing in that moment is doubling down on it. It's like try not to think about an elephant.
Yeah, right.
And then the subconscious mind pays attention to what you think about the most. So the more you try not to think about it, the more you're actually thinking about it. The more the subconscious mind, which is the law of attraction, starts to create unconscious plans to bring about what you want, what it thinks you want. And with teens, this is where the issue is. They don't have a prefrontal cortex. They don't have a pause button. So all it takes is subconscious plan to cross opportunity. And this is why they've had to install jump nets on bridges in our country. Because
the thing is that they're also going through all these hormonal changes at the same time. So there's a lot, and this world has a lot of stressors. For teens, it's the peer pressure. It's all the other things.
All of it. Yes.
We
don't, that's the one thing I had to work the hardest with my team. We don't care what the cause is. We are focused totally on preventing it from sliding from helpless to hopeless. That's our whole goal. If we can catch people before they hit that slide, before they know they're at risk. And so that's the majority of the population. We do intervention. We have connections to intervention programs, but what you're doing, Lynn, is so needed and so in alignment with our pure prevention process. We believe in pure prevention and stigma-free solutions. Yeah, if you can start on a personal development realm early, then you're backing yourself away from the edge with everything that you do to strengthen your inner core. So I'd love to know more about what it is that you do. The Extraordinary Being movement sounds awesome. Yeah.
Thank you so much. What the Extraordinary Being movement, we started out as a podcast with my two partners, where we're just we're all in the realm of dating and going through that. And so our show started off with just guys bantering about relationships, the opposite sex, and picking up women at the time and so forth. But we realized that as we were growing and speaking with more professionals, that we felt like this could be something bigger than just talking about basic dating stuff and relationships, because communication is so powerful, both internally and externally, that it opens up a huge realm that a lot of people don't realize that it's needed, and it's needed to be done properly. And today's society, people don't know how to communicate well. They do it shortly over text, they do it through pictures, and that can always be misinterpreted for certain things. It could be also abusive in many ways as well. So we created this Extraordinary Being movement because we realized that each and everybody is extraordinary in their own way. But you need to first learn how to be the person you need to be in life before you can do and have what you truly want, that lifestyle that you want. And starting off with awareness and understanding the being that you are is so vital and so important. So we decided to take our message onto a larger scale and to make it a global movement to empower people for personal growth and achievement. Because we all know we all have the ability to do it. And my partners and I were already on that journey, but we didn't want to do the journey alone. So that's why we teamed up together. But we're like, let's invite other people. Let's make this a world movement where we're all working together to uplift our lives, to level up, to live an extraordinary life, but not on other people's terms, but on our terms.
Beautiful.
On your own personal terms, because we all have a different view and a different perspective on what that lifestyle is. And for the three of us here, we all have a different opinion on what that could be for ourselves. But our movement is about taking a stand for yourself. And we want to be that voice, that platform to help you take a stand, even though you may not be ready right now. But we're here to be there for you when you are ready. And we interview people from all over the world on business, on various stages of business, starting out,
Mhm.
growing, marketing, advertising. We speak to relationship professionals, sex therapists. We speak to people in the realm of suicide prevention. We speak to people on communication. So we have a very diverse group of individuals that we bring into our movement because they believe in what we want to do. We want to inspire, influence, and motivate people for success. And they see that. They see our passion. And like Becky said, we do bring energy to our show. We want you to feel comfortable as our guest because we want you to really be open and share your story because that's the key. We're helping people have a voice to share a story because your story could resonate with the right person at the right time through our show that could change their life forever. And we don't know at times that type of impact is going to have. We might not hear it until months down the road that, hey guys, listened to your show. I heard the speaker. This is what happened. And when we hear stories like that, we're just, amazed and so thrilled about it that we're having that impact. And we want to continue growing that through our own coaching programs, through assisting other coaches to access a larger audience, through trainings, workshops, seminars, doing interviews like this, and having our own stuff. And we're currently working right now with Becky here to create our own book. As a blueprint, yes, to help other people succeed in life. And we're getting various authors various people who've been on our show to co-author the book to show that there is support behind this movement and how powerful it is and the impact that it can have on people in life. So that's a little bit what we do and what we're up to.
You can't do better than having Becky help you with your book. She's published
Of course not.
most of mine, both the individual ones and the group ones. So these are great endeavors to get a message out into the world.
This is so heartwarming to listen to this conversation. And I think that, taking care of ourselves and really staying on top of it is something that is so vital, because recently I went through a situation with one of my daughters who has now is keeping her kids from being around me because I'm not good enough person. And I went so dark again. And, and it was, yes, I kept on working, but my thoughts were going dark. And what I had to stop is I started talking about it. I started saying, hey, I need help because I thought I'd gone past those stages after you've lost people to suicide, family members to suicide. You can go dark yourself. Sure. And you have to stay on top of it. And all of a sudden I was going dark again. And it wasn't until I started reaching out and saying, hey, I need some help here. And, now I've learned just from today's conversation, I'm learning other ways just from speaking up and saying recognizing the signs for myself and saying, no, that is not an option. There is nothing that, and so now I've got some really good coping mechanisms that I've tapped into, to really keep me on that higher level, So,
it's awareness is the key.
Yes.
Yes.
And so, Lynn, I love the way that you put that together. That you have to be aware first of what's going on in your head and just be okay with that, and then you move into the doing and the having.
Yes.
And I was a doobie. When I say that I hid my psychic wounds behind frantic and frenetic entrepreneurial activity, I was a human doing, and I was always busy, and I was too busy to take the pause and actually just stop. And that's because I had a history of clinical depression, and I was afraid if I stopped, I would fall back into that. Exactly. And I don't wish that on anybody.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But it is the pausing and recognizing what is the thought that you're stuck on, and then getting help to change that one thought, because that's often what depression is being stuck on one thought. And so just the awareness is the first key that, hey, find who you're going to talk to, create your who's, and we have so many reasons not to ask for help. I've
Sure.
created a whole list of why we don't ask for help, and none of them are worth dying over.
No, they're not. And it's interesting your comment about the pause and taking time for yourself. And every life coach that I've tapped into and spoken to over the last couple of months, the first thing is, what are you doing for you? Or have you stopped? Do you stop and pause? Do you meditate? Do you journal? Do you take any time for yourself, or are you just constantly working? And it was like, oh, and so I was in a good pattern until this all blew up, and then I fell right back into the other. And it's the recognition that this is what's happening.
When we most need our stress management tools is when we stop using them. It's really just an observable phenomenon. So having people to ask you those questions, what are you doing to take care of yourself? Those are really powerful. And that's one of the places that the coaching industry, I think, does its best work. I'm not a coach. I came into this through the consulting realm. I'm a stress management consultant is my background. I say I predate the whole coaching industry, but it's because I do, the reality is, though, you want to have people around you that you can go to and not have to worry. In some states, certain professions have a reporting requirement. And if they think you're at risk of harming yourself, they are required by law to report. That's to keep you safe. Don't let that stop you from reaching out. Use an anonymous line. If you know that you're afraid that you might end up in the mental health, mental wellness, mental illness whole machine, if that's something that you're concerned about, don't let that stop you from reaching out for help. That's why they have anonymous phone numbers. It's so that you can have a conversation. We've actually been training advocates so that you can have a conversation with a trained advocate for living. We have advocates for living, advocates for staying. That website, either one of those .com, advocates for living or advocatesforstaying.com, will get you to our training program. We think everyone deserves to be an advocate for someone else, that's your fastest path to keep yourself off that ledge, and that everyone deserves an advocate to help you remember what's so good about your life that you will never go near the edge. And so that's what we're doing now, is going that very specific route. And our goal is to have an advocate in every boardroom, an advocate in every school, an advocate in every classroom, and an advocate in every home.
That's beautiful.
We're not supposed to go through life alone.
Correct.
Right. And so for those that are listening or will be listening to this show, and I don't always do this with some of my shows, but I think this is one that needs to go to my blog and to my my email sequence and on my Google business page, because it is too big of an issue, and I know too many parents that that never recover from the loss of a child. That I don't even know how anybody does. And watching my brother go through, I don't know. Today, he's not even a real stable individual just because of the pain of what he went through, and I don't want to see that for anybody. And actually, I kind of, having lost, our family has lost 5 members of our family to suicide. Wow. So it's very raw and very real. And even one is too much. One is too much. So the awareness and the sharing of this is what's tops, because we see it all around us every day. So as we continue this conversation, Jackie, you do a lot. You do a tremendous amount you have your summits. Tell us what else that you are doing to get this message out. And I know you have a lot of people know what you're doing because of how active you are, but how can we serve you? How can we make a difference for you to get this message out? And what tools and resources are you looking for? And which would make a big difference for you?
What tools and I'm going to do it in reverse order. The tools and resources I'm looking for. The first is any stage I can get on, any podcast, anywhere where I can be interviewed and share the power of the talk about suicide. My TEDx talk is in the TEDx process. So the talk about suicide.com is where people can find out information about when that's going to launch. And having people watch that talk, comment on it, and share it would be a huge help. Inside the talk is the 4-step script that helps people actually have the talk, actually break the silence. And that's what's going to be needed, is breaking the silence. So those are the resources. What we're doing is training advocates, launching Mindset Magic. I just created Leaving Shouldville. Shouldville is that dark, dank place you go when you should on yourself or other people, thinking things should be different than what they are, the opposite of acceptance. And so that just went up on a very powerful platform. The platform is emotionalteflon.com. And people can get this session, which is like a vision board on steroids. And it gives them the 4 truth path, the 4 different pathways out of Shouldville. Because Shouldville is a pretty yucky, rocky place. And lots of people live there. Dreams go there to die. That's what's so bad about Shouldville. So we want everybody out of Shouldville. So we've created this tool for them. And that just went up. It's completely free. So people can grab that. We are continually creating more ways for people to understand, become more aware, have the conversation, like the suicide risk factor assessment. And that is, you love me. I know you like my domain name. You can't tell by looking is how people can access the suicide risk factor assessment. You can't tell by looking. And that's the truth about suicide. You cannot tell if someone is struggling with suicidal thoughts by looking at them or even by listening to them. And even if there are signs, your reticular activating system is designed to screen out those signs if it's your child. Why? Because you believe your child is okay. So you're not going to get those signs to penetrate into your conscious mind. You'll find out after the fact. Oh, trust me, you want to feel guilty about something? You go to the suicide risk signs in the Center for Disease Control after your kid is attempted. Okay, that's the most guilt-producing, most useless document in the world because no one thinks they need it until after it's too late. What we're finding more and more is the first sign that someone's at risk is an attempt, and they don't all survive. And that's why we're beating this up.
Until them. Yeah, it's so sad that it's not until them.
So this is why you can't tell by looking. Don't wait. Have the talk about suicide before there's any indication that they're struggling. Why? Because, well, here, would you wait to talk to your child about sex until after they were pregnant? Would you wait to talk to them about drugs until after they were in rehab?
And you start very early in talking about those things.
Ideally, would you wait to talk to them about alcohol until after they'd lost their driver's license to drunk driving? But we wait to talk about suicide until there are signs. It doesn't make any sense. And so we want to bring some sense to this. Make the talk about suicide in the same genre that you would have the talk about sex or drugs or alcohol. True. And if you're not having one of those talks, we need to talk.
It's awesome. Yeah. So the extraordinary being movement I'm sure there's a good opportunity for Jackie to get her message out through your portal of excellence.
Oh, of course. Yes. Of course. Yes.
And I see that as being part and parcel of many other great things to come, between your book and your show.
Oh, and I can't wait to get you on the summit, Len. We will
Oh,
have
great.
a good
Perfect.
conversation. Yeah.
Great.
And so, what other resources do you need, Jackie? What other things? Because we kind of circled around, the.
Well, actually, I want to find out what Lynn needs, because there's got to be some other ways that we can work together with our networks. And so,
Sure.
what I need are stages. So that's an easy one. Lynn, what do you need?
I think I'm in the same boat as you. I mean, I need to be on a stage to get our message out there, to provide those resources to people so that they can access a number of coaches that would fit best for them, to be able to, get to that first point. There is help out there. There are other ways and other avenues to find what they need in life. And I work with, coaches on all various levels. I have a number of teachers who are in the coaching field as well, so they understand students. They understand them at a younger age to have these conversations with. And I have a number of people in my network that can reach out to these youth in other ways to start helping them with more awareness. And I would love to get our movement out there to show people that, hey, there's not just one person, but there's a whole group, a whole tribe willing to help you, willing to support you, willing to raise you up.
Mm-hmm.
So I can see some great collaboration between the two of us to really help get our message out, and transform lives.
Beautiful.
Cool.
What the beauty of this is, it was funny because on Friday I was at an event, and I brought all my stuff to go to do an interview with Jackie, and we could not make the sound work. And I'm sure it must have been my computer. I don't know what it was, but we just canceled the show just because I couldn't seem to make it all happen. And yet I think this was really meant to be. And it's the synchronicities of life that make it so cool, because, I think this conversation was meant for us to share together on this stage. And what the two of you do, what we all do really, and I think being an impactful influencer in today's world is at the top of our priority list. Mm-hmm. It's the fiber of what we do. And it's our voices and helping others to have the same voice that kind of make that ripple effect out to the world of making a difference. And as we get over the shame, the guilt, the fear, the heartache, and live a happier life, do you know what a smile does for one individual?
Sure.
Just that in itself, when you have that smile, when you're at a grocery store and you look at somebody in the eye and give them a smile, do you know how many times people will look surprised that somebody actually did that? Sure. That actually did. And so I equate that even to this conversation is there's a certain light that comes from being able to stand up and talk about these very, very, very crucial topics. And there's a light that comes and a vibrational frequency that comes from it that ripples out to the world. Mm-hmm. And it's that ripple that affects those individuals that need to hear the message the most, because I read somewhere, because there's a lot of people that understand what vibrational frequencies mm-hmm. are. But they say that once you begin to change and you begin to shine your light a little bit more, what begins to happen is first it affects your family, and then it ripples out to your neighborhood, and then it ripples out to your community, and then it ripples out, and it keeps going, because vibrational frequencies are so important. And there's quite a study on this. But what I'm seeing here happen is the synchronicity as well, is being able to join efforts, mm-hmm. because we don't have to all do this alone. That's what we're here for, is walking arm in arm, and let's get this message out to the world. And the many messages. What you do, Lynn, is extraordinary. That's why we
Thank you.
Extraordinary Being Movement. What you do, Jackie, is amazing, and I mm-hmm. applaud you, because we can hide our lights under the bushel basket.
Sure.
We often don't want to expose ourselves for what we feel and what we've gone through. We want to, like this, but lately one of my keynote speeches has been on talking about what it is that standing up and sharing our voice with the world, whether it's through the printed page, through social media, through standing on stage, is we become advocates, we become way showers, truth tellers, we become unifiers, and then we become are able to leave a legacy.
Sure.
And that is why the passion I have in working with those that I work with to bring their messages to the world is so important, because we look at every avenue of how are you going to get this message out, and how are you going to keep it seen? It's by doing all the steps. We live in a pretty amazing world that we have this technology available to us at a time like this, because our reach can go so far. And that is my message to the world. And I think for both of you, is it takes all of us locking arms and all of us standing and shining our light, and all of us making sure that we reach as many as we can. And
I think it's the age. I think it's the age of the messenger.
Yes,
that we have tipped into the age, and now messages are what matter. What message are you sending? What message do you need to hear? And Becky, you provide such a great platform for people to get their voices heard. I just want to say thank you very much.
Thank you. To me, I feel like I have the best profession in the world, because I meet some of the most incredible people. They're bringing such incredible wisdom to the world. And I have one lady that she's publishing in a couple of weeks. It's emergence of leadership to heartship, and leading from the heart. And then another lady is Whispers in the Wind, and actually it's for an environmental type of a cause, but she's using a fiction book, which is really incredible. She's an attorney using a fiction book to get her point across about the environment and taking care of our environment. And I could go on and on the list of people that are really standing up. And I think that as each of us begin to do that we are transforming our world one person at a time.
Sure.
And that ripple effect does go out to the world. It's pretty cool, super cool. I'm honored that we got to do have this conversation today. I'm honored that we could share the stage, so to speak, with this wonderful conversation. And I think that I have another show coming up, actually while I'm on vacation. But I think there's a slot, Jackie, the person that is heading up, they're going to take my place for this show. I think I will reach two of you too. So I will make an introduction and make sure that he's aware of that. In fact, I think there might be him and another person, because they have the ability to get the reach of that call, this even further. So truly honored by both of you. And
thank you.
Very, very appreciative of what you are, and for Jackie and I, Lynn, to see a young person taking the stage. I was at an event this weekend, and the two young men that were at this event, there was a bunch of us older folks, but these young men were just soaking it up. And I'm looking at them and thinking, man, if I had that when I was your age, wow, what an amazing thing that would have been. And so as a young person yourself, with young children and doing what you're doing, what a blessing to your children, but what a blessing to the world that you're awakened to the fact that you can get the word out, and that you can do the work that you're doing. So thank you.
Thank you.
So with that, it's coming to the close of our show. And for those that have listened, reach out. We've had quite a few little banners going across the bottom that you can tap into. But if you have any questions, the show's on my YouTube channel, on Facebook, on E360 TV. Reach out. There's always a way to reach out and tap into. And if you want to be a part of the show, let me know. So thank you to both of you.
Thank you.
Awesome. So that we will end our show for today.